A very warm welcome to Bhutan This Week, our weekly news magazine program. I'm Sonam Rinchen. Our top stories. His Majesty the King granted special audience to 7 armed force personnel for their bravery and patriotism. Her Majesty the Gyaltsin's 24th birthday was celebrated at the Linkana Palace on Wednesday. And some of the assembly members said civil servants might even get less than 20% pay raise after the actual calculation. Coinciding with the birth anniversary of Her Majesty the Gyaltsin, His Majesty the King granted special audience to 7 armed force personnel. They were recognized for their bravery and patriotism.
6 police personnel, including a woman, and 1 army personnel received special audience with His Majesty the King for rejecting bribes while on duty. His Majesty the King and the Gyaltsin also presented gifts for their service to the nation. The 7 armed force personnel said it is a great honor to be recognized by His Majesty the King and said they will continue to serve the nation with utmost dedication and loyalty.
Anyway, due to basis agulipa, ansum nang chamchim ani bichimdalu machitisum lenigi tangbadu rewayami.
Her Majesty the Gyaltsin turned 24 on Wednesday. The day was celebrated at the Linkana Palace. Coinciding with Her Majesty's birthday, the World Environment Day was also marked. Her Majesty is the patron of the environment sector.
His Majesty the King and Her Majesty Gyaltsin were joined by the Prime Minister, representatives from the armed forces, students, taxi drivers and employees of the RSPN and NHDCL to celebrate Her Majesty's birth anniversary. They offered tashkada and birthday cakes to Her Majesty. They were also granted an audience by His Majesty the King and Her Majesty. Her Majesty was born on 4th June 1990. Her Majesty Gyaltsin is from Pangte in Bumthang. Her Majesty went to Little Dragon Montessori and then to Sunshine School. Her Majesty studied for a year at the Changgangkha and completed her middle secondary school from Lungten Zampa. After Lungten Zampa, Her Majesty went to St. Joseph's Convent and the Lawrence School in India. Her Majesty then went to Regent's College in the UK. Earlier today, in a separate event, Her Majesty Gyaltsin launched the refrigeration and air conditioning curriculum for the technical training institutes developed by the Labour Ministry. Her Majesty also launched the Integrated Solid Waste Management Strategy for Bhutan, developed by the National Environment Commission. Later, Her Majesty Gyaltsin also awarded prizes and certificates to the winners of the school ozone competition. The prizes were awarded for essay, poem and drawing competitions. During the event, dresses made from waste were also exhibited by Go Youth Go, a non-profit organization formed by a group of young people. Compiled for Ishinyidup, Jigmitele, PBS News.
Her Royal Highness Princess Chimi Yangzum Wangchuk opened the 14th International Society of Ethnobiology Congress in Bumthang. Over 400 participants from 56 countries took part in the week-long event.
The theme this year for the 14th Congress of International Society of Ethnobiology is Regenerating Bioculture, Ecosystem Resilience and Transmission of Traditional Knowledge.
The International Society of Ethnobiology continues to make positive impact across the globe. It is wonderful that the Ugyen Wangchuk Institute for Conservation and Environment has successfully partnered and collaborated with the Society to convene this important Congress in Bhutan. Today, more than ever, we need to come together to address the challenges facing us as individuals, as nations, and as citizens of one planet.
Her Royal Highness also launched a book titled An Ode to Bhutan's Biodiversity yesterday. Participants attended the opening ceremony in their respective traditional attires and performed traditional songs and dances. This international congress is held every 2 years. The International Society of Ethnobiology is a global, collaborative network of individuals and organizations working to preserve vital links between human societies and the natural world. During the week-long event, the participants will be completely engaged in field trips, conferences, presentations, and meet local communities to learn from. The 14th International Society for Ethnobiology Congress is coordinated by the Ogen Wangchuk Institute of Conservation and Environment in partnership with International Society of Ethnobiology. Compiled for Komakaka, Kinsang Yishi, PBS News.
When the Finance Minister presented Pay Commission's report to the National Assembly, Lempo said that the pay raise was organized in a manner that the high-income earners were getting a lower percentage of raise and that the low income would get a higher percentage of raise. The raise, however, according to both the government and the Pay Commission's report, was contradicting to what the Finance Minister had stated.
MP Zangle Dukpa and MP Dojewang, they said the information the Finance Minister provided was incorrect. They said there is a huge difference between 20% for the civil servants and 131% for the Prime Minister.
시장 오마디라 다르게 위포기 위포 야생이 시장 오마디라 마 추슈두시기 이 세베달로 당아기 가자 찌잡다 있으시니라 다 렌칭이 직접 숨지 소치 러버드시기 독조레니 쿵디 게데베 깨도로 구데베루 남론직도 둘레 찌잡지세 가데베 구데베루 데베라 야수 있으시니라 텔레파 나 텔레 짜침 쳐모가 라타웨 간래 라루 숨지 소도 라루 캐칭아 대 마마마 히비간래 거기 해마기 람섬 엘라완스 더비간래 쇼업디스기 자샤 캐치민두 쓰시니라 대대래 마기 디스뉴 야기 토베 야수이 아니 시자디랑 같이 다리디 대다 가짜수입니다 다리 되셔미디 땀 맡으면 쓰시니
린친다 튀미기 바날루 자차 직자 딘추된 숨 개발이 안 지슈실라 직자 딘추된 숨 튀미들 린치기 바날루 렘보다 튀미기 바날루 자차 굽추고딘 녜마 배워친디 린친다 렘보기 뉴포디 덴데벨리틴디기 납중아 딘라 이멜라 다 린친다 튀미기 바나디다 사다남기 개발해야 마도 때 사다남기 개발친 자차 이머친 사다남기 개발을 작업을라 다 자차 딘추 딘숨 배워라디 사다남레 하시시 말하기 되게 놈멜라
Dramit Singh Asang MP said civil servants might even get a lesser raise after the actual calculation, and this, he said, was not enough to meet the inflation. Others said civil servants would get a raise of only about 2,000 to 3,000 yutrum, even if it was calculated at the highest increase rate possible.
테르붐 치다 차든 구글에 겨울에 땡디기베 땡아치기 손데 디날레 파디 난고비 탑람치 마통 시슈니 젠데지베 와친 데다 야 렘볼 행기기디 말하기디 소견이야 데디 마팜니베 추수인 시슈니 디나 탕디 주고라 인루야 데디 마무이 톨레베 데 안에베 야시 데다 말레 마디디 손데 나루 마타루 나기 손데 나세기 지치 마통 그 세침 마팜니기디디 마치 손데 메텐 시슈니 여바베민도 야시니기랍
te male magi junyob susum soge yasing beilo ngapchure yasing bedeberu kebar mindu debuda ngachi sunde di tabura gachi nammo sawajin ngachi sunde di yamchung su gi thadun tago se sunde debe jumi se shuni la thandi juge ngache na chaktu beudalu thimi disugi khatle tato datona chongchongil hengegi thimi be ni fodi meruya khime bzumbeya te chaktu kapsu chedor bewi kapsu sunde debe jui se shuni te tato beudan jun sap no satantang sap rikpa sap yobde no misegi debera gui da rikpa sap de animbela
te na lejimbe te tiktam di jeudalu te konagi himagi basic pay di da tele lump sum allowance di chikha dabdalu dabbebe te tatogi sap basic di tawachin te kam mindu se shunila te konagi yarsing dia te khangla di gu chamchi shube thya sunu ngoma te basic go di jachale bawachin jacha nga tu techigele yarsing mindu se shunila ani bendigi tato zithapchi ebajin te animchi khalu I se shunila.
To this, the Agriculture Minister said that the civil servants were also getting a 20% housing allowance in addition to a 20% pay raise.
당아지기 날로 일호기 셈마세 데 디다 차다디 당아지기 다루라 자샤케지 데 강락이 센디 유유스 슌닐라 다도 일호기 잠지기 투산 마셔와 데 셰미디아 센디 유유스 슌닐 디아 미망기라 경고 유유스 슌닐라 다디 잠질루라 노솜 단다바진 텔랑아 저라기 유황 토이기 안날레 데밀루 고와디 수메 슌닐 자샤케지 데 찬염로라 대신 유미디고 텔레 자샤 소소소소베 다마 유미디로 자샤 bombe 텔레 야기디 테타냠다 담니기 콜레 데베 센데 유유시.
The finance minister clarified, saying the percentage of raise was calculated based on the recommendation of the 6th session of the first parliament.
테 자샤기디 테 나트민베 임베 자샤디 다니 버들 딩아 자샤 딩아기 자샤 베르데 티시베르데 딩안기 소나는 미 티시메 세슈니 다네 버들로 때 딩안레라 자셔마도 바진 딩안레라 때 손데 나마진 때 개합도 미슬로 페니메 세슈니 때 다네 버들로 투지 레지메 나디게베 때 낭업디 남섬에 카치에 세슈니.
This in turn resulted into another heated debate on which document the parliament needed to follow for the pay raise discussion. The first pay commission report, or the second pay commission report, or that of the cabinet report. The House, after much discussion, deliberated on the cabinet report. Tiki Chorindaji, BBS News.
National Council expressed serious reservation over the proposed pay revision report of the government. Members said the proposal contradicts with the very austerity measures the government initiated in responses to the country's present economic challenges.
The Pejogi Kangel de Devera Jaumes Shunibingla. Tan Netang Dizum Chigu Hu Beldalu Tengachera Teta, Nachera Gakabgi, Mikjon Zora, the Gakab Rango Rando, Zoni Ding, the Rango Rando Zonigi Denlu, the Gadebe Info Yarsendi, Gadebe Toponga Singara Dokwa Chachila. The Peljorgin Netang Dizum Chidu, Disudangagi, Zozoya Me, Disugara, Shipsel Be, the Shungi Kitab Disuna Letin to be. The Netang Dizum Chilu Shadi of the Mijel Lumbogi Chole, the Debigi Dauchuninalu, Peljorgi, Gadimchibe Yarjijo, Gajimchibe, the Lesham Jodi, Nachalu Garalu, Info Yarseng, Betsubigi, Nedi Gadele Junga, Sishunivela.
To this, the finance minister said the pay commission did study the country's economy and salary hike was an effort to catch up with inflation. Finance minister, however, said that salary hike is a part of the government's pledge.
Shungsabgi the Kelang base issue. The Kelang Belgian touching on only should be Machi Shungi, the new police Shizuk Bedigibe, the Digi Genkudi new police to do is a Shunila. Tane Bodolo. Nipol Hinsugi, Taung Sum de Jing, Aji Gakabgi, Chitangi, Tengaji Pejo Jachabdi, Kadebina, Kara Shipsel Bay Sessionilla, Tane Badolo, Tagonle, Shugubindu Sessioni. 니동 주질레 대 니동 주니 대 주수 수수기 날로 대 주수 대래 니동 주지기 대다 다우두드지메 대표들로 논이다 다우두드지기 대가지 개합 집단기 같이 빼줄기 제첩디 공기 십술지 배다우들로 대가지기 개합 날로 다 공세 야바디 대 니동 주니 레벨 지자버진 입지 자샤 캐지되지 아수로 세메라 inflation dila ta kejur beshuwachin te konse yaba jodalo ta income erosion di jacha kechi dechi ki ma topo mabala ta ane badalo 시사 ngoma bol hensu khatule jacha khere yasang bemidi te shisa de anurgu shakti ke be seshunila.
The eminent member said the pay revision came at a wrong time. He said despite the World Bank and International Monetary Fund hinting on country's bad economy, the government went ahead with the pay raise.
Nisul hankada mijelembogi honle teda nifo yarseng di teda atsichi mahaga se noigi duachingila. Da diete da lembogi lolok sunande teda chaktule dubigi shungchi te khelange devera zoise da nigi 독바다 다 얘기 차자디 같이 모세와 진다 켈랑레 템비기 때 시주디스 줍니기 된로 다 개합 할람 개합 방kum메텐가 모세위기 차자 보험유라.
While other members also raised a similar concern. Some said hereafter political parties should do away with such pledges which will risk the country's economy. Meanwhile, some members said private sectors and people in the rural areas will take the brunt of the pay revision. Members also said, going by the pay report, the gap between the high and low income group will be further widened. Pematsuki for BBS News.
The National Council recommends a complete halt of the pay raise for the non-civil service and the government secretaries until the economic situation improves. Non-civil service includes the Prime Minister, the Cabinet Ministers, equivalent post holders, Members of Parliament, constitutional post holders under Judiciary, Privy Council and the Attorney General. The salary hike, which is expected to come through by next month, should be met through domestic revenue. Domestic revenue mostly comprised of export from hydropower. The government also expects to save revenue by doing away vehicle quota and withdrawing over 1,000 government vehicles. Meanwhile, members are skeptical if the measures recommended by the government would actually help in reaping financial benefits in reality. Members said government's measures are all based on assumptions, while the projected budget of 1.799 billion Newton will have to be spent for the pay hike. Therefore, members said salary revision for the non-civil service and the government secretaries should be kept on hold since the revenue generations are all based on assumption. Meanwhile, members decided to bring down the salary percentage of the Prime Minister, Cabinet Ministers, Deputy Speaker and the Deputy Chairperson. House decided that the salary of the members, that is 65,913 Newton, to be the basis of their proposal. However, for the constitutional post holders and government secretaries, members agreed on the proposed percentage as recommended by the government. The recommendations passed by the National Council will now be discussed in the National Assembly. Compiled for Sherab Zangmo, Sonam Rinchen for BBS News. If the establishment of Business Opportunity and Information Center in the Economic Affairs Minister is proved illegal, then the government will close down the center. This is what the Prime Minister Tringtobge said in the National Council. The Prime Minister was questioned on the legality and the high salary of the staff of the center at the National Council last Friday.
The National Council members said that the establishment of Business Opportunity and Information Center by the government is not in accordance with the law. Since the center will be dealing with money, they are just like any other financial institutions. Therefore, the centre should have a separate bill which should be discussed in the parliament. Some of the members also said that the salary paid to the staffs of the centre is too high.
Kajanadi titengalenka wole tukdechi se debedu se junila. The imdalu the lalen tabdalu the tengalenka wole member the jiop ki dansu member the jiop ki chikalu chigabe the yupchi halam da gergi exazum chibera debe chitu zedanu se junila. Debe imdalu tanga chiragi 당아라기 독바다 기용 속덕이 지와디 때나미 질린 춘도 가데베 디니모서 와진 당바디 땡아지기 배워진 땡아지라기 팀 자침침le 고츠비디 지미 팀가 드라베루 다디 융로 디즈미기 지오기 치갈로 tukde disu jisu beodolu te dibi wanse di tim gatile tendi jumina sevigi dokpachi yesu junila kopen disu da tinalo labemi disugi info disu name same thodani digi disugi da namto lanu se shuniwele die gachimo se ochinte dambara ngachna gekhamnalu peljorgi tapma deu bomten digulu tet mangil mebigi golu te ngachira shungmase ngachira mijul lensungi utsebi lembo disu gara te info yarsen ma shewa shudi te gekhabi info ni kangel de suma se chense deve zemdi shui deve dalu da dizumgi tewachi gotsup dalu te khongi gopenle gozungdi tele khongi ma labe mesu te info name same ya thoda be dalu mise de su namtolanu se shuni bengla sukde di kachira sukde bero timda tigdigi be sukup dochi be wachin te maba timda tigdi so de chatim chi sam dochi be wachin te hema chokdenale gosun te chokdunale nembodalu te chokte nina jukobe te indebero tanga cheregi chisogi zambegi timzo chewi nechu ni tong chuchi cheminalo tensen chuji changa chudunalefa te tekochingi chei se yula te anisugi netangda anisugi tensenda tikdigibe te chukde jisugi chatim chamdibere te mitubega se shunila dugi ngildel leden chatim iton chuchi the Financial Services Act tar du bedalu liu sumbaginalu tension chuchi banalu kate khidi emoso wachin ta mingo gaberu la chukde gaberu ngildel leden chugi chongle tabdochi bebachin gejung ile wonzinale choktamji lera lengo sunila tanga chinaldo to bio ICLU dizumugi choktamel lelumi ngachi garagi ken tele konagi bengdin me talalin tabdalu gadeb tabna semegi ngachi da dokbadi digu sunila.
However, Prime Minister Sring Tobge clarified that the budget for the economic stimulus plan will remain with the Royal Monetary Authority and the centre will not deal with money. He also said the government has not violated any laws.
송될 고갑 다든 때와디 팀내 개와 대 독법의 멤버 니틱베 대 수나마친 대 딩아치기 순대 나심래 대 니혼톨레디 대 참에 따추초베 유세슈니 다 가디치베 다디 팀레 테리바리베 대 개와디 대 민두 디보들루 투기 독바 보험베라유 모함발루야 대디 융종 속박이 디나트니렐 대 생계 준속이 대 가농 매니기 년카 두세 대 나부 대 디기 투기 차제 대 제디 여바진 대 디양 아치기 순데 나심레 대 달레파 대 차라카데베 젠나 대 디기야 순데 나수 세슈니.
The establishment of Business Opportunity and Information Center was approved by the Cabinet last December to promote entrepreneurship in the country. Ishingidup, BBS News.
Well, that is all we have for you this week. Join us again next week for yet another edition of Bhutan This Week. Until then, it is goodbye from me, and I am Sonam Rinchen.